I love this fellowship so much, and I know, as Carrie said so beautifully, everyone as a part of this fellowship does. And if you ask them why, I'm sure they would have a lot of eloquent, loving reasons to tell you. But I think it's important to say it out loud every once in a while. So I wanted to use that topic today. And oh, and the other thing I wanted, is it Paul? I wanted to apologize because I think I was staring at you when I came in. And I finally, sitting here, I realized why, is I have not been out of the county in so long. I do not remember the last time I saw someone in a suit and tie. And it's beautiful, and it's a sign of respect. And so I'm sorry if I was staring at you, but it was your suit. Okay, so one time, one of my first winters I spent in Door County, and I've been here 20 years. I woke up and it was snowing, and it was January, and I could see by the thermometer on my window that it was 20 degrees. And I could see my car from my bed, and even from my car I could see that it was covered with ice, because there'd been rain and then there'd been snow, and so the car was covered with ice. But still, I got up out of my comfortable bed and I went out and I spent 20 minutes chipping away ice from the door handles. And I'm a California girl. I had never done this before. This was bizarre to me. But chipping away the ice from the door handles and the windshield, because it was Sunday morning and I wanted to go to church. And I didn't have to go. And but I just was hungry for something that I could get at church that I didn't feel like I could get anywhere else. And when I got there, I saw that a lot of other people had braved the cold, and maybe they had garages, but still, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get up on an icy morning. And I started wondering, why? Did they come for the same reason I did, or is there something else here? So it just was a ripe area for reflection for me. So I started asking a lot of people, why do you go to churches? And, I know I grew up in the Baptist church, and I was in the Catholic church for a long time, so I've been around. Some people say I'm a mongrel, but I think I'm a hybrid. So, in traditional churches, people go sometimes because they've been told it's a sin if they don't go. Some people are trying to get a leg up on eternal salvation. Some people go because they really yearn for guidance about their lives from this ancient book and an invisible God. That's nourishing for them. Of course, they like to see their friends too, but I think we do that too. But that eternal salvation chips is not a motivation here. There's no damnation and there's no salvation in this church. It's not the result of an archaic imagination that has created a lot of things that are probably metaphorically true, but not literally true. There's no God that punishes or rewards here in the Unitarian Church, if there's any God at all. And I know that many of you are members and that you pledge annually, and it costs you money to keep showing up here, because in a lay-led, pastorless community, you have to give of yourselves, you have to give of your resources, your time and your energy to keep this fellowship vital. And this is a wonderfully vital fellowship. Observing what you have done in this last year and a half to keep this community together has been very inspiring. And I'm not here a lot of Sundays unless I'm here, but I watch you, and I know what's going on. And I watched a lot of churches in this year and a half, and a lot of them have made an effort, but I think you've done the best job. So I wonder then, what is it exactly that calls you here? Believers, non-believers. So in my inquiry here of asking people why they went to church, which went on for years, one of the friends that I talked to was a childhood girlfriend, Susie Hawks. And we had gone to the Baptist church together. And when we were 10, we were in the 5th grade, and the pastor of our church decided that one of the 5th graders should get up during the service on Mother's Day and recite the 23rd Psalm. So all of us 5th graders learned the 23rd Psalm by heart. We practiced it every Sunday in Sunday school. And we knew that only one of us would be invited to speak at the service. And it turned out that Susie, my friend, was the one who was invited to speak. And she was very proud of that privilege that had been given to her. And she was sure that she would perform very well. But come the morning of the Mother's Day service, and it was time for her to stand and recite, she stepped to the front, and a new emotion entered her life, fear. And she found that with all these eyes on her, her knees started to tremble and her heart started to race. And she took a deep breath and she began. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. But then the words were gone. She could not remember the next line. But as she stood there, she could hear voices whispering the next line. Whispering from the pews of the people in front of her. Whispering from her friends seated over where all the kids were. And the people in the church knew how she was feeling. And they were willing her to say the psalm. They were bringing forth the psalm out of her because they would not let her fail. See, I don't know the next line. She began again, and every time she even paused, she would hear these voices. She would see the lips moving in front of her, and not just by one person, but by 3, 8, 10. And they carried her along right to the very end. And now, in retrospect, all these years later, she says that's when she fell in love with her church. It was when she began to understand how it felt to be encouraged and supported by people who cared about you and who wanted you to succeed. She didn't use that language then, but now she says it fed her soul. There's a great little vignette in the Gospel of John where after Jesus dies, he comes back to hang out with the disciples for a while. And just before he disappears again, he has this conversation with Peter. Peter, the man who was given the job of building Jesus' church on earth. And Jesus is giving his instructions, his last instructions to Peter about how to do the job, and his words were very simple. He said, "Feed my sheep." Now, feeding the sheep is one of those metaphorical things. I mean, it has to do with food, of course, but it also has to do with taking care of people's needs for friendship and for shelter and for encouragement and family. And feeding the sheep is loving people and trying your best to give them everything that you would like to have for yourself. This is what I love about these Bible stories, you know. Actually, when I drove down the hill, I think it's the Baptist church up the hill behind Cindy. Anyway, there were people pouring out the doors, which is always when I go, you know, what are they getting there? I don't know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I love the Christians. But, you know, the stories feed me in a different way. Not because they actually happened historically, but biblical narratives are stories about values. And they're wrapped in a narrative so you can remember them. And the sentiment about feeding people is not unique to Christianity. It's at the heart of every religion over time and over cultures. They all say the same thing at their basic heart. Love people, serve people. It's that simple. Love people, serve people, feed them. Even humanists. You know, I know a lot of atheists too. And my very best friends in life, lifelong friends, were committed atheists. And they used to taunt me. And I said, "You're not fooling me, you guys. I know what you believe in. You believe in love. I've known you all my life, and I've seen you as the most loving, giving, serving people I've ever known. And if God isn't love, then love is God. It's just a matter of, what do we call it? Semantics." So here, you know, not motivated by a love of or a fear of a deity, humanists show their respect and their reverence for life by living decent, compassionate, caring lives. Members of this fellowship are an extraordinary example of that rule. A belief in God is not required to be a person working for the betterment of life on earth. Many of us have been nourished by this fellowship. Maybe it's been a small group that you worked together that became an important support system for you, or a close friendship that grew out of a shared interest, but your lives became bonded and knitted together over time. And I know Carrie knows exactly what I'm talking about, as most of you do. Maybe it's been the comfort that comes from the quiet knowing that someone attended your dear friend's memorial service. Maybe it's been the care that was expressed to you when their pet died. It's people who share your life with you. It's ups and it's downs. It's someone knowing that you care when you've had to go into the hospital. Someone knowing that you're there for them when they've lost their spouse. Someone that's with them when your vitality and your strength diminishes. They get it, and they care. It's knowing that you stick together in this incredibly fragile life in which we are all so vulnerable. Our health, our money, our livelihoods, our politics are vulnerable in every moment. And yet, we walk fearlessly through this life, in part because you know this church family will be there with you. You have learned that it will feed you, and you understand that you feed each other. Most of the people who have what I want, which is purpose and heart and balance and gratitude and joy, are people with a deep sense of a spiritual life. They're people banding together to work on themselves and for their community and for the larger world. And they may not always succeed at loving perfectly, but they are trying. And they're part of something beautiful. You need them. You want to know them. You want to be known by them. And you want to be them. The evidence suggests that you come because you need a place where living in that spirit is a common good, a shared goal, and where being known and being cherished is what each person seeks and offers. I think that community is in the church because church is a place where we have agreed to work toward a network of human relationships where financial profit is not the goal. Individual achievement is not the goal. Where friendship is more important than advantage. And solidarity in a common vision of human dignity is a compelling presence in your lives. And it seems to me that you come to church because you care about those things and you want to be with other people who do too. You come because you care about this place. You care about each other. And you show that in all the efforts that you make. A new sign. Everyone's proud of the new sign. The memorial garden. How lovely that we have a memorial garden. People take care of the building. They work on committees. They take time and effort to make communication an important part. I mean, a lay-led pastoralist community is an extraordinary thing. I've tried to talk some other churches into trying it, and they're terrified. They can't imagine what they would do without someone up here leading them, telling them what to do every day. You are miraculous that way. You work on so many things. You clean the highway, you sell fair trade coffee, you have your caring committees. It's a long list. I don't have to tell you what it is. But you feed each other. And you know that doing all these things demands sacrifice, and you're making these sacrifices every time you show up. This is the lifeblood of this fellowship. Because you know if it's going to flourish, it's going to cost you money and effort and interruptions to your busy lives. And who knew that at this stage of our lives we would be this busy? But we are. Your time could be spent in so many other ways, and yet you continue to give. So, is it worth it? Yes, it is clearly it's worth it, because you wouldn't keep showing up here if it weren't. Some of you are familiar with that wonderful writer, Annie Lamott. And she has, in one of her stories, she said, I always imagined when I was a kid that adults had some kind of inner toolbox, some shiny tools, the saw of discernment, the hammer of wisdom, the sandpaper of patience. But then I grew up, and I found that life handed you these rusty old tools: friendship, conscience, honesty, and said, do the best with these. They will have to do. And amazingly enough, against all odds, they do. These are the tools that you use to nurture each other and the world around you. And I know I've not said anything new here today. Sometimes I come and you do learn something new. I know that's part of what stimulates you and keeps you happy. But today, I thought we need to say thank you to each other and to the people who've come into these walls. Helene is one of the founding members. I think there's some other founding members here. You've been through a lot. You've given a lot. Sally is too. Raise your hand if you're a founding member. Lee? Oh, Cindy? That's, and it continues to flourish and be a place of love. And I think every once in a while, you just need to stop and say these things out loud so you don't forget them. They're important. You're doing a great job. Peace be with you.